Hello and welcome to episode 14 of Insight Weekly. The past couple of episodes we've concentrated on coronavirus related incidents and developments from across the globe. This week we're going to do a little bit more of a wider scope of what's been going on in each region. But if you do want some COVID-19 related information, we are doing daily updates on LinkedIn every single day, as well as a webinar that we will be releasing later today. And that's where you'll be able to get anything new relating to COVID-19. Please feel free to like, share and comment on our videos, ask us any questions, get involved, get engaged with the videos, and you could feature on next week's podcast. So first of all, we will go over to Max.
So today actually we're going to look at Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, there's been quite a significant resumption in fighting between the Afghan security forces and the Afghan Taliban. And this is significant because it comes after a period of quite a low level of violence after both sides engaged in peace talks involving the US government as well. So the peace talks essentially broke down a few weeks ago. It seems to be that they broke down over a dispute regarding the release of approximately 5,000 Taliban prisoners, which the Afghan government understandably refused. So after that dispute, that seems to have been the catalyst that broke down the peace talks after a 1 week reduction in violence period. And now we've seen resumption at rates similar rates to what we saw before the peace talks began. So the Taliban seem to be trying to prove a point here that they feel that they're approaching peace talks from a position of strength. So we've had a SVB IED attack in Badghis province in the north, involving a captured Humvee. There's been major attacks in Zabul, and this week as well, some major attacks at a district centre in the northern province of Badakhshan. So these attacks they've not been isolated, and they've not been minor like they have been during previous weeks. These have been major assaults surrounded by other continuous fighting, particularly in the northern provinces, actually, as well as your regular areas such as Helmand and Kandahar, where there's always high levels of fighting. And this takes place at a time when there's two other really important themes taking place in Afghanistan, which is quite worrying for any security watchers, I guess. The first is, of course, COVID-19. As it's spread across Afghanistan, health workers already struggled to get to the rural areas of Afghanistan at the best of times, let alone at a time when fighting's resumed at high rates. And as well as that, there's been a political divide within the Afghan government itself. So Abdullah, a high-profile politician in the country, has declared himself the victor of the recent elections, even though he didn't actually win. And he's declared himself the president, as well as Ashraf Ghani, the current recognized president, also declaring victory in the election. So it looks like the country is on the brink of a civil war all the while, whilst fighting is resuming at this incredibly high, quite violent rate.
Thank you very much, Max. Next, we'll go over to Scott.
Yeah, so across Europe, we've had some significant developments. If we look briefly at Northern Ireland, there's increasing concern that dissident and paramilitary activity will increase, taking advantage of busy emergency services dealing with COVID-19 just now. Taking, for example, the recent hoax IED placed by dissident Republicans in Rosslea. Looking at the rest of Great Britain, there's been an interesting juxtaposition between support for the NHS and medical services. 500,000 people signed up to volunteer and help the NHS, whereas on the other side, recently a doctor was forced to leave his home in Oxford over concerns of COVID-19 contamination. Posters have also appeared across the Midlands suggesting that COVID-19 is somehow a cure for humanity. And if we look across wider Europe, in Germany, we've seen an increasing number of arson attacks, just in general across the country, but also attacks on essential infrastructure such as supermarkets and pharmacies, just really aiming to take advantage of busy law enforcement. This pattern is continued across France and Belgium, attacks on police officers, including knife threats in hospitals, and missiles thrown at police officers across the country.
Thank you very much, Scott. And next we'll go over to Daniel.
So North America has been dominated by coronavirus. Over the last week period, we've seen a significant escalation of COVID-19 cases in the USA. especially concerning New York, which is, of course, the financial hub of the US. We're now seeing New York City report approximately 7% of worldwide cases. As of the 25th of March, we had 61,000 cases reported in the US with I think 841 deaths, which is a significant increase over the reporting period. President Trump declared New York City a major disaster area this week as well, which allows the city to access federal funding and FEMA support. We've also seen troop deployments within New York City as well, and the National Guard assisting. So this is really important, as it's the first time in US history that the president has declared a major disaster over a health threat. So we've seen Army field hospitals and US hospital ships being deployed to New York City. New York City authorities estimate that they will need approximately 140,000 hospital beds during the pandemic crisis. So this is of great concern. Relating to those incidents within New York and wider in the US, we've seen a continuation of panic buying and associated assault incidents and hate crimes, specifically targeting the members of the Chinese community, for example, in New York. We've also seen panic purchasing of guns reported in certain states, as well as police reporting that they're focusing less on specific routine crimes to be able to sort of focus on public order and COVID-19 related offences. So this is going to be interesting to see whether criminals use that to their advantage now that they've been given potentially more freedom of movement to act in certain areas. We've seen assaults as well on sort of supermarket employees who've been coughed at or sneezed at by shoplifters. Again, this ties up law enforcement, who then have to react to those incidents, as well as criminals who claim that they've got COVID-19, which again ties up law enforcement having to really focus on the health aspects of that. Trump has also stated that he wants to reopen America by Easter, which is a controversial decision, with many state governors or local officials not in agreement with Trump's decision at the moment. But Trump has stated that the cure is worse than the disease and that the economy needs to get going. I think the next few weeks we will see if Trump's assessment is correct or if the public officials are more accurate.
Thank you, Daniel. I know you mentioned there about in New York and police focusing more on public order than criminality. I know we've actually seen a statement like that being released in the UK as well. We've seen increasing pressures on the policing across kind of UK and Ireland. Is that right, Scott? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Scotland, for example, the Police Scotland have requested that volunteer police officers, special constables, be released from their everyday jobs to contribute increased hours. In Northern Ireland, the PSNI has expressed concern that policing activity will be reduced over concern for the protection of officers. England and Wales, kind of operating as one policing unit, has said something similar to express concern for police officer safety and the fact that minor crime might be ignored in favour of public order. Also, in neighbouring the Republic of Ireland, a few hundred Garda recruits have been permitted to finish their training earlier than planned, so that they can be deployed onto the street to support existing officers. Policing across UK and Ireland and in Europe in general under quite an immense amount of pressure.
Thank you, Scott. And finally, we'll go over to Vincent, who is talking to us about South America this week.
So this week, I'm looking at Trinidad and Tobago and how the recent outbreak of COVID-19 is affecting the islands. Most recently, the number has been 60 cases confirmed, but this week saw the first case confirmed in Tobago, whilst previous cases were concentrated in Trinidad. This week has also seen the first death reported. This situation could be made worse in the coming weeks and months due to an influx of Venezuelan migrants coming in. This last weekend, we saw a group of 60 migrants being detained by authorities in Cedros in southwest Trinidad. There's reports that during the detention, the migrants were taken straight to the police station without being screened for illnesses. And due to the recent COVID outbreak worldwide, but also in Venezuela, where over 100 cases have been reported, this poses a threat to Trinidad from the importation of more cases. This was the third incident this month, with 2 incidents previously reported earlier, totaling a number of 66 migrants. There's been calls for increased Coast Guard patrols off southwest Trinidad, but so far that hasn't really taken place. There's also been similar calls been made for increased patrols that have taken place off Curacao, Aruba, and Bonaire, which are the ABC Islands, also located north of Venezuela. The whole situation of COVID-19 in Trinidad has a potential, especially if linked to migrants, to bring up anti-government protests. Last year, we saw similar protests linked to the government's policies regarding Venezuelan migrants, with some believing that the government wasn't doing enough to stem the flow and to deport migrants back to Venezuela.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So that is our overview from the past 7 days across the globe. If you do want COVID-19 related incidents, please head over to our LinkedIn page, Intelligence Fusion, where you can access a free interactive live map of the most recent COVID-19 related incidents, as well as the latest webinar that our CEO, Michael McCabe, posted yesterday afternoon, as well as our daily updates covering the last 24 hours with regards to coronavirus. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well to get weekly updates direct to your inbox. See you next week.